Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Africa Wiki Women Voices podcast. I am your friend and host, Oluwapelumi Tosin Aina. Today's episode is about knowledge integrity, a very crucial concept within the information ecosystem. In a world where manipulative information spread faster than fact, open knowledge advocates from Wikipedians to civic tech volunteers stand on the front line of protecting information. But here is the challenge. How do you stay open and inclusive without becoming a gateway for misinformation, disinformation, or fake news, satire, fabricated content? And how do you use tools, partnership, critical thinking wisely while keeping the public knowledge useful and trustworthy? Our guest today works at the intersection of civic technology and investigative verification. And together we will explore the habits, partnership, and guide that can help every advocate, including you, strengthen the integrity of the knowledge we all rely on. So today I have on the show with me Alicia. Alicia is an environmental scientist and Code for Africa Senior Products Manager at Sensos Africa. She holds an MA in Environment, Security and Governance, specialization in climate security from the University for Peace, Costa Rica. She leads a team of hardware engineers and technologists in a citizen science initiative, developing and utilizing IoT sensors and other remote sensing technologies to monitor air, water, and sun pollution and radiation, among other environmental hazards. Open data from these technologies is used to provide citizens and civic watchdogs with actionable information on their cities and communities in the continent. Alicia has over 10 years of experience working in sustainable development projects in Eastern Africa with local governments, NGOs, CBOs, and development partners. She has an ardent desire to tackle human vulnerability in global south by building resilience to climate change through adaptation measures and disaster risk reduction to mitigate security risk. Alicia, welcome, 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 welcome. And thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much. I'm sure that was a mouthful, but thank you so much for having me on the show. I am excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much. You're welcome. And I was going to ask you, how do I pronounce your surname? I didn't want to murder it, okay? So that was why I actually had to stick with Alicia. I was trying to play safe.
It's Olago.
Olago.
Yes.
Hey, Alicia Olago. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Welcome on board once again. I was super happy to have you on the show today. All right, so Alicia, I personally think what you do in Code Africa, is really, really quite inspiring because I personally think you save lives. And that, that responsibility could actually, is really fulfilling when we look at it from the outer part and also, try to look at it from the inward part at the same time. But it can also be challenging at the same time. How does it feel to occupy such a position?
To be honest, it's actually quite rewarding because
Mm.
being in the science space, it's very rare that you get a chance to work with engineers in collecting data that's supposed to then go and support conversations around human systems, health systems, ecosystems as well. So we are trying to protect human beings, but also looking at how can we support nature and biodiversity. And I've never thought I'll be in a space where I am working with engineers to do that. So it's actually fantastic.
Wow, awesome. Beautiful, beautiful. Good to hear that. Okay, let's dive right into today's conversation. Like I said, we're going to be unpacking knowledge integrity. And I personally think to unpack knowledge integrity, it requires looking at different roles and contributions, of many actors, individuals, platforms such as Wikipedia, governments, the private sector, civil societies, academia, and the technical community. But for this episode, I want us to focus the conversation on the agency of individuals. Our individuals' action, choices, and responsibility shape the quality and trustworthiness of public knowledge. However, because knowledge integrity is in a household term, some of our audience may be, encountering this for the first time. So, Alicia, to help build a common understanding, what exactly is knowledge integrity, and why is it such a crucial part of the open knowledge ecosystem?
Okay, I love that you call it knowledge integrity. I call it information integrity, which is just the same.
Mm,
Um,
mm-hmm,
But if we talk of knowledge integrity, we're thinking about accuracy, which is quite important, consistency and reliability of your information within any ecosystem, because this
mm,
then supports that freedom of expression and access to trustworthy content to whoever is going to be consuming it at any point in time. And again, those key things on accuracy, consistency, reliability that support that ecosystem, supports freedom of expression, and that access to trustworthy content is what then helps us avoid issues like misinformation and again, disinformation on the other side. And if
mm,
you can think of it in terms of there's someone who doesn't know what is misinformation, that's almost, if I can describe misinformation, I would say it's unintentional false information. And then
mm,
if you look at disinformation, it's deliberately misleading information, right? So
mm,
the
mm,
difference. One is unintentional false information, and then the other one, disinformation, is
mm,
deliberate misleading information. And without this kind of without having information integrity that supports that accuracy, reliability, consistency of the information, then you will end up having these two challenges of misinformation and disinformation. And we all know the challenges that come with that are happening on the ground in the communities and also on a
mm.
very global scale.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Alicia, I really love the fact that you put it out there. I love the definition first off that you gave to misinformation and disinformation. That's from another angle, and I love that. Okay, so for our audience who probably are hearing the word misinformation and disinformation for the first time, that's a plus for you. Okay, now let's bring it down again. Let's get deeper into the conversation. When we talk about open knowledge is built on openness. And that's like, open knowledge. It is built on openness. But that same openness has also made it vulnerable. Today, like you said the whole time, we see more manipulative content in the digital media. Half-truth, doctored data, biased narrative, all spread everywhere. Now, on the other side, we also have our open knowledge contributors and advocates, working to defend knowledge integrity and amplify knowledge equity. But with the advancement in technology, especially AI, it has made manipulation harder to spot. Many people can actually tell the difference between a real thing or can tell when a data or credible source has actually been tampered with. Some people do not even know when what's a deep fake is really in today's society. So, Alicia, drawing from your experience working with an organization that actually advanced data journalism and makes fact checking in forensic data analysis tools accessible to a wide amount of people, citizens all across the world in the continent, right? What are the clearest, red flags that open knowledge advocates from solo editors to a group of contributors can actually, learn to recognize when evaluating information, data set, and image to avoid amplifying manipulative information, like you mentioned the other time, disinformation, misinformation, fake news, unknowingly?
I'll answer that question I hope, in the right way. So, how I look at what you've asked is the best way to identify the red flags. I think from the onset, before you begin any work and before you put it out there in the public, like you said, we're talking about open knowledge.
Yeah.
And if we look at what is the history of open knowledge, we started having open knowledge more so for us in the beautiful African continent because
Yeah.
we had data gaps, right? We had a lot of data gaps. And the data that was available, that was digital, was actually too costly. So it was impossible for nations, individuals, communities to be able to access it. And that's when the birth of all these different organizations and institutions, one like of course, the Wikimedia type of thing, and then you have Code for Africa. And we share all that relationship around looking at how can we support these communities. So if I would answer the question on how do we identify the red flags, I can come back to how we do it at our organization, which would be ideally fact checking. And this goes down to if you're going to have any kind of open knowledge, which means it's accessible to anyone and everyone, it must be verifiable. How would it be verifiable? That means that you've had some fact checking that's been done on that information. And if this is actually done, it's easy for us. Of course, with the AI conversation, it's becoming harder and harder for us to do this. But I think we are supposed to learn to also use the same tools that are used against us, right? So we need to do more fact checking, and there's a lot of forensic investigative tools that can be used to support this. So before you put out your information, you need to make sure it's okay. But I know you're also looking at it in terms of me as the consumer who does not at Wikimedia or does not work at Code for Africa. How am I then going to be able to identify these types of deep fakes and everything going on with AI? And for me, how we handle that is we take that conversation back to us who are working in the open knowledge space. So we need to have more engagement, more partnerships with community on the ground. I think first thing is to do a lot of engagement with community in terms of workshops. I think we keep having these discussions at a very high level, but we are not having them on the ground with the person who's holding their phone and seeing this deep fake. So this is something that needs to begin happening more, whether we're going to do it in schools, whether it's going to be in social halls within your communities. We need to start going more on the ground and start teaching people on this. And that's specifically on AI. And if I can speak for it also in the climate conversation, we need to do a lot of how like we need to promote scientific literacy, right? So we need to have people understand the small basics that they need to know. And this doesn't also only have to do with climate. This needs to be on different topics. And it's because we're giving so much access of information to people. And of course, with disinformation going on, if we empower communities on the ground, at the ground level, grassroots, if we start empowering those people, I think it will go a long way in terms of supporting the conversation around identifying red flags. And aside from that, I think it's important as well for us to maybe have this included in education curriculums, right? We are in a digital tech world, and especially within this African continent, we consume tech and we are brilliant at tech. So why not have a curriculum whereby we can have it such that it's basic information like learning math, that everyone now learns that, look, AI is here to stay. We either run with it or it fights us. How do we do this? Start teaching people from a young age so that they can learn this. And then for those who are, of course, past the age, go to the communities, have these conversations. And for us who are in the open knowledge space, have more partnerships, lots of partnerships. And aside from that, the other really big one that is quite challenging goes to the tech moguls, right? So thinking of Meta, thinking of X, and in even Google, for example, if we can have more incentives that ensure they within themselves, when they're designing these types of digital tools, we give them incentives such that they will be more keen to have more verification and fact checking within their systems, so that whatever is coming out of their application, whether you're consuming it on TikTok, whether you're consuming it on Facebook, I don't know, whatever your preference is, we make sure we support those, we give them incentives to eliminate and remove those types of deep fakes or any kind of AI kind of built information that we know does not support anything, is rather destroying communities and leading more to mis and disinformation.
Wow. That's really powerful. From what you've said, I've picked a lot, and I'm just going to mention it out to you. You've touched on grassroots empowerment, education, and also talking about, and I love one word that you use, using the tool that is being used against us, leveraging it in order to make impact and also solve the problem, so we can actually utilize the tools that is being used against us, or the tool actually contributing to we having more manipulative information in the digital space, leverage on that to also provide the solutions. Amazing, fantastic. And what you said about the partnership, I really we're going to be getting into that, more in the conversation. So I really don't want to, draw so much on that. So I'd really want you to speak more about that at the same time. But now let's shift the conversation from that to building resilience. You've mentioned what we need to do, the importance of people, contributors, creators on platforms like Wikipedia and all the open knowledge platform, and also all the online digital platform like Facebook, Twitter, all of those mentioning the importance for creators to actually ensure that before you put an information out there, you want to ask yourself, is this verifiable? Have I done my own work? Is this actually correct? Have I fact checked? Have I actually, really done the homework to ascertain that this information is credible enough to be out there for thousands and millions of people to actually feed on it? Now, too often within the open knowledge space, and I'm speaking as an open knowledge advocate and also as a Wikimedian and Wikipedia, all right, open knowledge advocate and, platform sometimes treat resilience as if it's just about, about the contributions and content removal, policing what appears on the side. But knowledge integrity, if we actually look at it deeply, isn't just about closing doors. Yes, removing bad content matters. It really matters a lot. We're trying to actually curtail that from reaching the broader audience. But is that enough? Should we focus? Should our focus stop at taking down, or should resilience include a broader strategy? So, Alicia, I'm going to be putting this to you. How can open knowledge advocate and foster civic resilience against digital information manipulation? And while we are doing this, how can we ensure that the core values and benefits of healthy information ecosystem, such as openness, inclusivity, inclusivity, and trust, are not overlooked in the process?
A very interesting question. I think, apart from what you've said, I think the one key thing I would say would be having collaborative fact-checking networks. And I think Wikimedia already does that, but we need more. And for that to happen, there needs to be an influx of funding and capacity building, right? And this again goes to the conversation of languages. So it's possible these fact-checking networks going on, but do we have enough of them that are representing the Arab-speaking nations, the French-speaking nations, the Portuguese-speaking nations, Swahili-speaking nations, right? Because they also have their other aspects of misinformation and disinformation that produces itself. And I would imagine that it is very difficult to do that training in Arabic and come back and do it in French and do that, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe train people on forensic data analysis in those aspects. So for me, I think one, it would be there needs to be a lot of funding and capacity building within
Mm,
the open knowledge space. So whether you work in Wikimedia, whether you work in the media, because media is also a very powerful source of open knowledge as well. So
yeah.
there needs to be more capacity building, definitely more funding coming in to support the strategies that are working. And so for this capacity building, it can be capacity building, of course, on verification, fact checking, forensic analysis and investigation, and also AI, like I previously said. Like teach people how the best ways for them to prompt, teach them to understand these things, teach them to identify all these challenges. Because I would imagine, for example, Wikipedia, if somebody puts something about me, I don't even have an account, and I find someone has put some information about me, and on you guys' side, someone would have to keep going to edit this type of things. Well, maybe in the future, Wikimedia can now have also some AI going on at the back end that then also identifies these types of things much faster. I've realized that with technology, if you can imagine it, you can achieve it. Somebody in the
Mm,
world is probably trying to build it, but we have not just explained to them or expounded on exactly what our pain point is. And the moment the open knowledge conversation becomes a team effort of I work at I'm from Wikimedia, Latin America or Europe, and you put everyone together, you realize their challenges are exactly the same. I am not
mm,
from Wikimedia, but I also know and understand similar challenges that you have. We have people trying to manipulate our data. So
mm,
it goes back to that. We need funding to be
mm,
able to do that capacity building, to do more of that, and also figure out how we are going to have more use of technology. So there needs to be
mm,
more conversation around people who work in the tech space with people who
mm,
work in open knowledge. Because I think before it was really, I am a scientist. I am a different kinds of fields, sorry, specific kinds of fields. But now
mm,
I think the tech space also needs to come on board and become a
mm,
partner, looking at, all right, so what are the threats that are found within a specific product, and how can we make sure that we protect this? And then on the other side, who puts in the content, and how can we have tech tools or some kind of technology, whether it's AI, that can also do the content moderation and almost identify some of these problems. But again, all these are just, I would say, speculations until we can actually have that funding coming in and capacity building to support people. Because someone in Wikimedia could get trained, could be trained
mm,
on use of AI, and they could be the person who then builds this tool that protects all the Wikimedia products, right?
mm,
It could
mm.
again be replicated against another open knowledge organization similar to ours. But yes, in summary, I think that is what I would say would be the best, at least a stepping stone towards achieving that.
Hmm. Beautiful, fantastic. What you've said actually makes so much sense. It really makes so much sense because as a Wikimedian who actually works within the ecosystem, just like you said, a lot is currently underway. Like we're working on a lot, but we still need to do more, especially when it comes to the context of capacity building. Right, we have volunteers all across the world from different part of the country with their device actually contributing to the ecosystem. But it brings us down to the question: are they really empowered with the right information, just like you said, the right knowledge? These people at the grassroots, do they even know what fact checking is all about? Do they know how to decipher even information they get from a particular website or a news organization is not credible enough? how do they actually decipher? How do they, tell the difference and, make accountable and reasonable action that can actually push the open knowledge ecosystem forward, or let me say the public knowledge in general forward. And it also boils them back to what you said on funding. For all of these things to happen, we need more funding. We need, leaders in this community getting funds in order to bring these people together, empower them on tech. And I think that part on technology really interests me so much, because I feel like over time, especially within the open knowledge space, and I speak from the angle of the Wikimedia community. Oftentimes you see so many Wikimedians just feel like, okay, it's just all about contributing to the creating content, contributing to an article, editing an article. And, we pay little or no attention to the technical part. Okay, let me just learn about the tech part. What can I do? How can we actually leverage this and do this in order to actually boost the sustainability and also the efficiency and the credibility of the information we put out within a platform and within a community. And so it really makes so much sense. And, those points that you have actually put out are really, really valid. So now let's bring the conversation away from building resilience and let's come down to more about the actions on the part of the individuals. When we started the conversation, I actually said that we have different agents when we within the knowledge, when we talk about knowledge integrity, especially within the information ecosystem. We have government, we have civil society, we have civic community, we have the private sector platforms, online platform like Wikipedia, Wikidata, Facebook, and all of that. However, given sometimes I feel like people normally think that when we talk about this issue, it's not a collective task. But you would agree with me that protecting knowledge integrity in today's digital ecosystem is a collective task. Content consumers, creators, platform, the private sector, etc. We all have a part to play. But collaboration is, rare. When we bring it down, right? It's really rare, and then it's also rarely straightforward, and interest, conflict, incentive, just like you mentioned, doesn't always align, and the power and resources gap just make it a little bit difficult, a little bit difficult in for those collaborations and partnership to happen often, not just at the global level, but also at the local level. We have community within the Wikimedia movement. We have community in different parts of the world, in different countries, local communities within different areas and different part. But so I want you to give your insight to this in the context of partnership. You've mentioned that before, but not just at the global level, but also at the local level. So how do diverse actors actually come together in practical and sustainable way to preserve knowledge integrity, and what partnership strategy, I know you've actually said something about that the other time, but I really want you to emphasize on that. What partnership strategy should open knowledge advocates and communities pursue to strengthen the collective capacity for building and promoting accurate and trustworthy public digital information?
Okay, if I can start, one thing I'm very passionate about, and most people know, is indigenous knowledge. And
Mm,
this is really looking at the information from our ancestors. And this goes back to my field, which is really heavy on climate. And I say that because there's a lot of, I would say, Western adaptation and type of mitigations. How would I phrase this? So there's a lot of adaptation, mitigation options that are normally offered. Of course, they work. But
mm,
for me, it's also important to embrace that indigenous knowledge that comes from specific communities. And
mm,
if you think about it with the grassroots level, there's a lot of information on the ground that's, one, not already being collected and compiled into a kind of repository that allows us to access adaptation and mitigation measures that used to work in the past. And if you already look at that, the fact that there was a local community that had its own ways and actions to the challenges they have that are ignored, then it means that when you bring in your own kind of solutions, they're not going to receive them. So if I can connect this to what you said, is it then goes back to having trusted voices on the ground. And that can go both ways. You can have that in the digital space. You can also have that just locally on the ground, whereby when we are building partnerships, we need to go to the communities and almost identify who is a champion in this community. And you will often find that there is an individual who is trusted, and who knows everybody, who everybody believes would advocate for them in a fair way, which means that when they share information, so they are considered credible. Remember, this is also the same person who can also lead to mis and disinformation because everybody already trusts them. So for me, that is really a key person that allows you to have that tap into a community. And I'm thinking of this in terms of villages, very local, basic place, because those are the people who are consuming all this mis and disinformation. Those are the people who do not have the literacy levels to be able to identify this. And they are also the same people who probably only consume information on a radio or a TV and end up believing what is either coming from a faith-based organization, a church. What they hear in the community is what they believe. So if we are to work on partnerships as open knowledge advocates or anybody who works promoting information integrity, for me, the first step is going to the ground, going to the grassroots and having partnerships at that level. So if I can give an example of like, let's say Wikimedia, that's the Kenyan one, like since I'm from Kenya, they would now, because they congregate together, I assume, I'm imagining how you work together. So when they do the congregation, there is probably someone from Nairobi, there's someone from a secondary city, there's someone from a much more rural place, right? All these people are your boots on the ground. So they should be able to already now tap into those communities and identify what happens within these places and have these kinds of community-based workshops. And now another example, Wikimedia Code for Africa work together. We already do a lot of training on fact checking, right? So if we are planning to build a fact checking network, we will now simply tap into your community and then look at what do they have at the ground and how can we work on building that up. And I think it's really important for us to begin at the bottom because those are the masses, and they are the consuming information that's not verified. They are not as key as us who already know that content needs to be moderated, and there's a possibility that something could be false when it comes from someone they believe it's credible. So if we're to have partnerships, number one, I would think indigenous knowledge is very important, and this cuts across whether you're looking at climate, whether you're looking at historical information, whether you're looking at planning a city, because the person who's been there from history will be able to give you history of how that city used to look like, which in the end informs policy and then also just brings that sense of ownership to them. So once they feel that we were also considered in this conversation, they own that conversation. And they already feel that, okay, I might trust these people. And then from that part is when now we bring in other partners like ourselves together, source funding together, bring a tech company into that, and do some kinds of workshops, looking at first understanding, having an assessment of what do these people know. And of course, this also has to be based off of us previously trying to understand what would be the issue. I'm imagining, for example, you are a government body and you're planning to have renewable energy, maybe solar energy somewhere in some area, and it's not being received in the right way because there's some climate mis and disinformation that's going on. that's really, of course, always coming from the global north. How are you going to debunk that? You need to first have trust
mm,
on the ground. And I think with the power that is something like Wikimedia, that's the first step. You're already doing it in terms of having people who then contribute to building your products. And for
mm,
example, Wikipedia editing that content and making sure this is correct. But aside from that, how much are we including other open sources of knowledge that are not the conventional one? And
mm,
I'm saying that based off the fact that there's people who just sit around neighborhoods and speak, yet they are not contributors to Wikipedia, for example. But they do interact with people who they consider to be their advocates and their champions, who also have information and are respected. So that person is someone now who needs to be on board with all of us. And
mm,
remember, that person would be specific to your region. So if we are planning to train someone in French, in Arabic, in whatever language, even if it's in Igbo, we would need someone who can speak to that community. And that's the
mm,
first step from it. Because once we do that, we start empowering the communities on the ground. And
mm,
then means when information is coming out, we also have them kind of contributing to verifying it because we have interacted with them and have probably
mm,
got much more rich information than we would have.
mm,
Yeah, so in terms of partnerships, I think from the grassroots level all the way up. So begin from the person on the ground,
mm,
grassroots level, and then from that level have open knowledge advocates working with them, do some kind of community workshops. But like I said when I started, we need to leverage the trusted voices. And I think that's the biggest thing. And for that, you can do it both on the ground and in the digital space. And that would mean almost identifying trusted content creators as well. And I think that's
mm,
a very special one, having trusted content creators such that when we're doing these kinds of advocacy and empowerment workshops, we have a point person who has a lot of following, who people consider credible, and who we have also verified that for the past 5 years of them being in the digital space, their information is actually a fact. They do not they do not put out content that has not been verified. They probably do not take any monies from organizations that support agendas that have mis and disinformation. And then we build a kind of trust list. And this
mm,
would be the group of human beings who we use to put out our information on social media or anywhere in the digital space, which then who are then now, we could almost call them our ambassadors in the digital space, right? So that leveraging of trusted voices. And for me, that those voices, they need to be two-way. We need to have the digital side of things, and we also need
mm,
to have that other person down on the community, because the community side, remember, in this continent, people don't all have digital phones, right? So
mm,
are waiting to listen to information either from radio, if it's TV in a community space, and some places the newspaper does not even get there. So whoever has read the newspaper, or whoever has watched the TV or the listen to the radio will probably go and spread that information on the other side. So if we
mm,
have leveraged trusted voices down in the community, have them also in the digital space, and then we as open knowledge advocates piggyback on that, empower them through community workshops, of course. And then with that, we are able to ensure this content moderation, because of course with Wikimedia we will be we like I like we when we did, like I said earlier, there's that fact checking network that we need to have. And that fact checking network that's verifying all the information we have is still based off the fact that you guys went and interacted with the people on the ground and got that trust level, which then kind of fosters that societal trust and resilience, which is so important, right? We need society to be able to trust the information that's coming out of Wikipedia or coming out of Code for Africa. And we can only have that by interacting with them on the ground and also having that representative on the digital space who is a trusted voice that we can leverage on. But again, all this conversation cannot go anywhere without, of course, funding. It cannot go anywhere without funding. Yeah, I think in summary, that's what I can say.
Oh, all right. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. We're running out of time and we're wrapping up literally. And I want to put this last question to you. Knowledge integrity can feel abstract, and it can be easy for to point at one actor, say platform, civil society, or even the creators, and say that's their job. For example, someone who uses Wikipedia every day or pull data from Wikidata might think they are just a consumer, not a part of the solution. Right, but in reality, I feel like we all have a role to play. Sorry. So Alicia, succinctly, I want you to, just, say how can we move people from that normal responsibility to practical action that can actually support, knowledge integrity and what are the check-in, let me say, check-in for individuals that we can actually adopt in order to ensure that our efforts are actually truly strengthening resilience and impact in the digital information ecosystem. So yeah, shortly.
I think the first thing I would say is the media. We need to foster a robust media landscape because they have the biggest listeners in the world. So aside from training us as open knowledge advocates, we need to also remember that the media is part of this conversation. They have a bigger audience than we do. And for that, we need to be part of the conversation. If we are having verification, if we're having any forensic analysis and training workshops on fact checking, media must be involved at all times because they have a bigger audience than we do. Aside from that, I think pushing forward with the work that we already do, we need to do a lot of advocacy on transparency and accountability on tech platforms. That's a very, very key one. Aside from that, we need to continue the work that we do. We need to keep creating, amplifying, and having reliable and actionable information, and making sure that people in the community know that this information is being put out to support our communities and to inform policy to make sure that people are living a better life, whether it's in relation to human rights or whether it's in challenges. The information is there to support the community moving forward. And speaking of that, a very big thing I already mentioned, leverage trusted voices and narrative building as well. I think that's another big one that we need to start doing. And that means more partnerships, more communication, like this, more podcasts like this, where we kind of almost brainstorm on what can we do, how can we partner as open knowledge advocates. And also another big thing I think would be a good idea is to have collaborative data repositories, right? We already have that as Wikimedia. We have that. Maybe we need to have more that are now pulling all our resources together so that this can also be viewed as a partnership with different groups, not just we as Code for Africa or we as Wikimedia. We can have almost like a Wikimedia Africa chapter that's partnering with for Africa, partnering with something else that's working on open knowledge to push that agenda. And lastly, I think we also really need to invest in digital and scientific literacy. That's another very important one because there are people who cannot identify all these deep fakes and all that. And I've already said this, but we really, really need to invest in digital literacy and scientific as well, so that people are able to identify any kind of mis and disinformation around the digital space and around topics that are related to science that are always we always overlook communities and individuals and assume everybody understands science jargon. But if we give them basics, and then we'll be able to protect them from any kind of mis or disinformation moving forward.
Well, amazing. Grassroots empowerment matters. Digital and scientific literacy is a must. Partnership is a great ingredient when we talk about knowledge, integrity, and also I think one thing that I've really held on to, from everything you've said from the beginning of the conversation up to this very moment is that, we are doing something. It's not like we're sitting down, we're folding our hands. Work is ongoing, really, in every part of
Absolutely.
the world. But we need to do more. We need to do more because advancement is happening every day. Globalization, we are in it. Technological advancement is changing. Everything is evolving, And with technological advancement, we also need to evolve. We also need to do more. And so, to our listeners, our audience all across Africa, Wikimedians and non Wikimedian, you have had it all. Knowledge integrity isn't just a policy or something meant for the government, the tech people, or civic society or private sector. It's a daily practice. It's in our hands, your hands, my hands, everyone, inclusive. And as our guest has reminded us, there are steps every advocate, every open knowledge advocate, and open knowledge platform we need to take in order to ensure that we build resilience against manipulative information in the digital space. So take one of the actions, take one of the insight that has been mentioned today and try it out. Do it every day as you contribute to open knowledge, as you contribute to the digital information landscape. Shape it with your community, track your impact, and become the future of open knowledge. It all belongs to us. It is not that the future of open knowledge or the future of information, digital information, belong to some people or to the government or to the private sector. It all belongs to us. We are in it, and we all must, choose to guide the knowledge integrity. Alicia, come on now. Thank you so much for today. Thank you so much for joining me today. But before we wrap it up, we have a ritual. We have something that we normally do, and I'm gonna bring you in on that. So I want you to just give a piece of advice. We have women all across Africa listening to us. We have young girls in Africa, okay? Some who might want to be like you in the future, okay? You are a tech guru, right? What you do within the Africa technological space is really amazing, And some people might also want to become climate advocates just like you. What do you have to say to them? What's that piece of advice you want to give to them to run with moving forward?
The piece of advice I have is, if I can do it, you can do it.
Mm,
Women were built to do multiple things at the same time. You
yes.
can be a wife, a husband, a friend, an engineer, a scientist, all in one. Do
Mm-hmm.
not let go of your dreams. And I think
Yeah.
the biggest one for me is women need to love women and we need to carry each other. So if you know
Mm,
someone who you can support or someone who wants to be in your field, support them, guide
mm,
them, give them the
mm,
direction they need. So in general, women must mentor women, and I am here if anyone is interested in figuring out how to move in this direction. We are carrying each other together. And thank you
mm.
for having me.
Fantastic, fantastic. There's an open check for Malaysia. She's open. She's open to help to anyone who might, you don't know how to figure it out. Probably you're just entering the tech space and you don't know how to go about it. She is open. Women supporting women, women mentoring women. Thank you so much, Alicia. Thank you, thank you.
Thank
That
you,
was
thank
really
you, thank
powerful. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we're comedians. I remain your friend and host, Oluwatelumi Tosin. I know your
you.
girl from the western part of Africa. Okay, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. Make sure you share this episode with your friend, share it with your enemy, share it with Wikimedians and non-Wikimedians. Everybody needs to hear about this because the future of knowledge integrity, the future of digital information ecosystem belongs to all of us. We all have a part to play. So we do not push our action to other people. We take responsibility. We become accountable and do the needful. Thank you for joining us. Till I see you next time. Bye.